Canadian Ride 705 here. Just want to do a quick video on how to do an oil change on the Indian Scout and Indian Scout Bobber. Now this applies to all models from 2015 up to at least 2019. They might make some changes in later years, but it's pretty straightforward. In a way it applies to all bikes, but there's some information specific to the Scouts and the Scout Bobber. So first things first, you want to get the oil heated up in your bike. The easiest way to do that is you can let it run for 30 seconds to a minute. I like to just take it for a quick ride. So I'm going to take a quick ride down the road and come back. So first things first, for any project you're doing on your bike, you should have the shop manual and you should read the information for the job that you want to do specific to your bike model. This is an oil change video. It's fairly straightforward, but there is some information that they will give you that, I'm going to repeat it here, but it might change over time, might change on a newer model of Scout. Anyways, to get started, you want a ratchet set with a 6mm Allen key. You can use just an Allen key alone, but I would not. The ratchet makes it very easy to make sure that you're turning in the right direction. And when you first crack your drain plugs, they're a little bit hard to turn. So if you're turning them in the wrong direction, you're going to make it even harder. You could do damage. It could be pretty serious. If you do happen to strip a drain plug head, there is a product called Speed Outs. Sometimes they're called Easy Outs that you can get. There's cheap sets available at the hardware store. They work excellent. They'll be good to, get out your damaged plug so that you can replace it with a new one. Hopefully you don't get into having to do that. So what I do is I hold the ratchet set in front of me so that I'm looking right at it, and I set it to loosen so that it's turning counterclockwise. And I make note of where the little indicator is on the ratchet. And then you get underneath the bike and put it on your first drain plug. You'll see your two drain plugs. Fairly easy to find. They're the only things that hold a 6mm Allen key. First one's sort of in line with your kickstand, where it attaches to the bike, and the second one's just a few inches closer to your front. It's straight in line with it. But you put your ratchet on there, and then you start trying to turn it. Now at this point, if you have somebody to hold the bike up for you, somebody to sit on it with their feet down, that's very useful. If you have a center stand, that's very useful. Doing it this way is kind of dangerous, because it's just the kickstand that's holding the bike up, and if it falls, it's going to fall right on you. However, that being said, I do it this way, but I'm very careful when I do it. So start trying to turn that drain plug to loosen it. Sometimes you have to hit your ratchet a little bit with your hand, use it as a hammer, whatever you got to do, but you got to pull it fairly hard. The crush washer really holds it in there tight. Once it starts to move, though, you'll notice that it moves very easily. It just turns from almost feels like it sees to just cranking and turning very easily. At that point, just leave it in there, move on to the next one, and start it as well. Once you have both started, no oil will come out, and you're good to go. Just leave it the way that it is. Then you're going to want to reach up and take out your fuel or your oil filter. To do that, sometimes you can turn it by hand. Usually you need to use your filter wrench. So in this case, I had to use mine. I put it up on there, turn it. Once it starts to turn, it's the same deal. It's a little hard to turn, and then it will turn a little bit. And then at some point, it gets very easy to turn because it is all lubricated threads because of the oil. And then at that point, you can take your wrench off and just do it by hand, just unscrew it. When that comes off, it will start draining oil. So make sure your pan is underneath. Collect that oil. It won't take very long for it to go from, a steady stream to just a few drips. And then you can move your pan back, reach underneath, and by hand, you should fairly easily be able to unscrew both of your drain plugs. As they come out, a lot of oil is going to pour out. You're going to get it on your hand, and you're going to need to clean up your hand. and the drain plug, and you might even want to wear gloves for this. So get those out, drain out the bike. I usually let it drain for about 10 or 15 minutes. As long as your oil's not still pouring out of there, you're good to go if you're in a hurry. If you want to, you can let it sit longer, but generally speaking, it doesn't matter too much. Just get as much of it out as you can. It doesn't have to be spotless and not even dripping oil. So at this point, you're half done your oil change, and that's actually the hardest part of it. Now you want to open up your oil change kit, take out your new filter and a new bottle of oil, and you poke your finger through the tinfoil on the oil seal, and then get some new oil on your finger. Rub it around on the seal of the new oil filter. Also, at this point, you want to make sure that your old oil filter came off with its seal attached. Sometimes the seal can stick on the bike if it's an old filter, and you can run into issues with that. So make sure you have your old seal off the bike. And then you're going to put some new oil on this new seal on the new or the new oil filter. And then you can just reach up by hand and start screwing it on. It should be very easy. It takes quite a few turns. Once it gets up tight, so that the seal is making contact with the bike, at that point, the shop manual you will see tells you to do an additional 3/4 turn. So you can do that with your filter wrench. Then you want to take your drain plugs, put your new crush washers on them, and you can screw them up into the holes by hand until they're tight. Once they're tight, you take your ratchet, put it on, set to tighten, and you can just start tightening them. You want to tighten them to the point where you're not fighting with it, but you want it to have a good solid seal. So you'll notice, you can turn it so far by hand, then it's fairly easy to turn with the ratchet, and then I do another sort of 1/4 turn crank on the ratchet and leave it there. If you over tighten it, same deal, you can cause some damage, which is sort of a big deal. You don't want to damage the bike itself. And also, if it's too tight, you'll never get the things out again. They actually seem to tighten over time. Once those are tight, you can start adding your new oil. So you put in your funnel. If your funnel doesn't fit because you happen to buy one that doesn't really have the clearance, which is what I did the first time I did this oil change, you can make a makeshift one out of a tinfoil cone just to help you get by, but you are going to want a good funnel that fits into your bike. So what you do is you take out your dipstick on the right side of the bike. That's where your funnel goes. And then you're going to pour in your new oil. You want to put in 3 full bottles, 3 liters of oil. And at that point, you can stop, put your dipstick back in, start the bike up, and it's going to pump up some oil into your new filter so that your oil level would change if you were to check it before and after. That's the whole idea, is you want to get that oil pumped up into the new filter and get it running around and circulating, warm it up a little bit. And then you're going to take your dipstick back out, shut the bike off, take your dipstick out, put your funnel back in, and then you can top it up to the point where it's supposed to be. Now, if you change the filter, the shop manual says the bike takes 3.8 liters of oil. So you're going to use almost another full bottle of oil. You don't want to overfill. Make sure you don't overfill the engine. So at this point, you kind of want to top it up slowly over time. Keep starting it up with the dipstick in, and then shut it off and check it. And after I do my first oil change, I also check it somewhere in the middle of my first ride or after my first ride. I'll just stop and check it out, make sure everything's okay. That helps you identify if there's any slow leaks or anything like that could cause serious problems, or if maybe you had the oil level wrong the first time you checked it. When you were doing it at home, you don't want to continue on for another 8,000 kilometers before you do your next one. That's it. That's how you do an oil change on the Indian Scout and the Indian Scout Bobber. If you like this video, thanks for watching. Feel free to like it on YouTube and share it.